We are at Ommegang Brewery in Cooperstown, New York. Just sitting here waiting for the tour and tasting to start. It starts at noon and we got here a little too early. Already saw a few things in the souvenir shop that I want to pick up. A few beers, right off the bat, and a hat that I liked, and a few glasses, because all I have is like one style of glass. I have two, but they're like of the same style, and they have like a variety of the different types of glasses.
But we're starting outside because it's a nice day. You can also see the archway really well from here. So we have two dates up there, 1549 and 1997. Ommegang, it actually means to walk about in Dutch. In addition, if you look at the building, you can see it looks a little bit more like an old barn than what a traditional brewery might look like. So I stopped like an old farmhouse. We're located on what's called Limes Farm. It used to be one of the largest hop farms in the region in the 1800s. Cooperstown to Oneonta was actually referred to as Hop City. That Route 28 would have been lined with hop fields, and it produced over 80% of all hops in America. Unfortunately, in 1913, a mold went through and it killed off all those hops, which is why you don't see them anymore. Above your head and behind you, that's called the mill house. It's like the ingredient rack. That's where everything's stored. So our barley, spices, and hops are all stored up there. Our barley is both domestic and imported from Europe, primarily from Belgium. Then our hops, I was saying, we actually use two varieties, a Texas and a Styrian Goldings. We import those to the Czech Republic. Our brewers will take the barley from the mill house, pour it into the 4-roll mill. That little blue box in the corner. So in the 4-roll mill, it's going to crack open the barley. That'll expose the starches in it. And at that point, they'll refer to it as grist, and they'll send it through this elevator into the mash tun. Basically, what that's going to do is it's going to convert all those exposed starches into sugar. So after several hours in the mash tun, it's going to be about the consistency of oatmeal from all that grain, and they'll transfer it over to the lauter tun, which is this one on my right. So the lauter tun, they basically just want to separate off the liquid portion from all that spent grain. All that spent grains actually get pumped out back into a big silo, which if you guys want to, when you're wandering around, you can see it. It's painted like a big cow. That's because we offer local farmers the opportunity to come and pick it up and use it as a feed supplement for their cows. So the remainder, we call the remainder wort. It means sugar water or fruit of beer. That's going to get pumped right into the brew kettle, which is directly up the stairs. So in the brew kettle, that's where our brewers will grab one of these cheesecloth bags. You can actually see one hanging off of one of the ropes. And they're going to throw in whatever hops and spices they're using into the cheesecloth bag, tip it into the brew kettle, and basically boil it now like a tea bag. It's going to stay in there about an hour and a half, after which you'll cool it down to about 68 degrees, or it'll cool off any sediment, and send it into the open air fermenter where it's actually gain alcohol for the first time. So the whole process in this brew house takes about 6 hours to make one batch of wort. So after they pump the wort into the open air fermenter, they'll heat it up to about 78 degrees. Our brewers will pinch the yeast or add the yeast into that. The heat will activate the yeast to start feeding on all those sugars, creating CO2 and alcohol as byproducts. So it'll stay in there 3 days, after which, if there's a batch in there, it will look all frothy. And after those 3 days, they're going to crop off or harvest off all that yeast on top, and they'll save it for future batches or for a bottle conditioning process. So I'd like to mention a little bit, we use an open air fermenter, which is fairly unique. Most brewers are using a closed fermentation system, like a tank that you see here. Open air fermenter is going to allow our brewers to work more hands-on with the yeast, also more of a traditional Belgian brewing style. So after those 3 days, after they crop off the yeast, they'll refer to that beer as green beer. It's not green in color, it's just fresh or not ready for consumption. So they'll cool it down to about 37 degrees and pump it right here into our lagering hall. So I don't want to confuse anyone, we don't brew any lagers here, we only brew ales. Lagers actually use a bottom fermented yeast strain, while ales use a top fermented yeast strain. Lager just means cold storage in German. So the rinser is just going to invert the bottles, rinse them out with some water, and send them onto the back line for the filler. So in the filler, and do what it says, it's going to vacuum out all the air first, then fill it with beer, and then use something called a fobber. It's going to shoot a little bit of hot water and CO2 in. Not to force carbonation, just to force the extra air out of the bottle. Air and beer really don't mix. You need air in your bottle, it makes your beer taste really stale. So from the fobber, they go to the capper and the corker, directly right off in this corner. You can actually see the little gold metal cages lined up. That's what's going to go over the cork. So it makes sense to get the cork inserted, and then one of those metal cages go over the cork. The little 12 ounce is going to get a metal cap crimped on. So then spin right through this one, it's actually moving around. And that is the labeler. So they spin through there, get a label put on, get spit out onto that end table where you see rolls of tape. our bottlers, we grab them, hand load them into boxes, stack the boxes up onto a wooden pallet, and then it gets wrapped up in plastic. Now, I don't know if anyone's been here before. This was actually our former warming cellar, but production's been going on, so we recently moved our warming cellar to a warehouse out back that is not very accessible. So I'm going to explain to you here. When I first started working, it was right here. But basically, you need a sealed off room where you can control the temperature. So there would have been plastic sheeting over that door. We keep it at about 75 to 79 degrees in here. There'd be all different kinds of beer in here, waiting gate carbonation, heated by hot water tubes underneath the floor, allowing the heat to disperse evenly out through the beer. It stays in here anywhere from 5 to 14 days, gated carbonation. The Witta, the wheat ale, stays in the least amount of time, about 5 to 6 days. The philosophers will stay the longest, anywhere from 10 to 14 days. After that time, our lab crew, you guys may have noticed the lab was actually right behind the open air fermenter. We'll grab a box for every single batch, test it for proper carbonation levels, microbiological purity, and a consistent taste profile. And the whole process, start to finish, is going to take 5 to 6 weeks in total. And at this point, we distribute to 48 states, all except for Mississippi and West Virginia, as they're 3.2 alcohol by volume. Alright, so the Witta is our wheat ale. It's 5.1% alcohol. And this one is spiced with coriander and orange peel. Similar in style, it's like a Hoegaarden or a Hoegaarden, if you guys are familiar with that. The BPA is a Belgian pale ale. This one's relatively new. It just came out in March. It says limited edition on there, but it'll actually be a mainstay beer. So you'll start seeing it a lot more. 6.2%. No cooking spices in this one, but it uses different hops than our other ones. So it actually uses more domestic hops. It uses the Celia, Columbus, and then it's dry hops and Cascade hops. So you give it a really bitter, kind of grapefruit flavor that you might notice. This is the Rare Boss, so it's our Belgian amber ale. 6.5%, and it's spiced with coriander, orange peel, like the Witta. And then we're going to add some grains of paradise, which are actually a dried berry, but they're part of the peppercorn family. So they're going to give it kind of a citrusy, dry flavor. We actually import those from West Africa. The Rare Boss, the name it means sly or strange fox in Flemish, and it's based on a famous bicycling bar in Brussels, Belgium. So the next one, the Hennepin, this is a farmhouse saison style, 7.7%, and spiced with coriander, orange peel, grains of paradise like the Rare Boss, and then they're adding a little ginger, so it'll give it a little tang. It's also a most highly carbonated beer, which a lot of people notice right away. This one, so I was just saying we'd recommend using this as a white wine substitute. But it's actually named after Father Louis Hennepin. There's a little picture of him on the bottle, but he was a famous Belgian missionary credited with mapping out regions of the Niagara Falls and Mississippi River. There's a little picture of him there. This is actually our bestseller. So the next one, so as you're saying, this is like the signature one in Abbey Ale. It's the first one they started doing in 1997, and they primarily brewed this one for the first several years that Ommegang was open. It's a double, which is a style of Belgian beer, so it's 2 times the amount of malts and fermentable sugars. It's going to boost up to 8.5%. Then it also uses very dark malts, and it's really dark color, and it's really highly spiced. It's our most highly spiced beer. So it's got grains of paradise, orange peel, coriander, licorice root, star anise, and cumin in there. So you notice like fruity notes or caramel tones, even chocolatey. Alright, so I'll start describing the last one. I'm having Scott, he's going to go grab some chocolate, because through Philosophers, we actually recommend using it as a dessert beer, because it has a little bit of a cherry flavor, because there's 2% of a cherry lambic blended in there. It's a Leafmans. So a lambic is a beer that we have to import it. To be a true lambic, it has to be brewed in a region called Lambic in Belgium. It's a wildly fermented beer, and it's a creek, so it has cherry skins and cherry pits added in there to give it a nice cherry flavor. 2% of that, yeah, into our blend. This one is a quad, so last one is a double, so this is going to boost it up to 9.8% alcohol.